Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Paige Velasquez Budde, who's the co-founding partner and CEO of Zilker Media. Paige, welcome to the program.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm excited.
You're welcome. And I want to hear all about what you do, how you do it, why you do it, and who you do it for. But let's get started with, what's your story? What's your background? How'd you get into the media industry?
Sure. It's an interesting story because I didn't actually seek to get into media. I actually went to the University of Texas, and I was on track to, study pre-law and go that track. And, during my time there, I just realized, hey, this isn't the course for me. And one summer, I decided to look around and try some different internships, and one really resonated me, which was kind of the catalyst to everything I'm doing now. I found a book marketing PR firm here in Austin, Texas, called Shelton Interactive at the time, and decided to try my hand at PR for nonfiction books. So primarily we worked on business books and healthcare books. And we also did some Christian business books at that time, that genre. And I just fell in love. I fell in love with PR. I fell in love with marketing. And at that time, if you can think back to when Facebook advertising was starting to emerge and all those different types of online advertising were really
back when it actually worked, you mean?
That's right. The golden days, I like to call it, when we could target really well and, have an incredible cost per acquisition there. And, I started falling in love with the digital side as well, and learning and just trying to immerse myself in that. I ended up, staying in book marketing at that firm for several years, full time, and just absolutely loved the agency life. That firm was sold in 2016. So from there, I went on to represent what I call, people, brands, in the political space for a little bit. And then we started Zilker Media in 2017. And we were able to bring together, it was actually some of the team members from that book marketing firm who started this firm. And, we were able to say, hey, what did we do really well? Well, we realized, we represented authors really well, and most of these authors led businesses. And so our goal was not to only work with them on a project, but help them scale their businesses and work alongside them long term. We also got rid of the things we didn't do well. So
yeah.
And that was just such a beautiful, just kind of entrepreneurial journey, being able to create something new. And that's really kind of been my journey throughout all of this. And we've done incredible work here at Zilker Media for the past 8 years. We just celebrated 8 years.
Neat.
And, we get to do a lot of work with CEOs, founders, and just some incredible companies all over the world.
That's awesome. And one of the things that you said that I kind of triggered on was we got rid of the things that didn't work. And what that connotates is you actually had to notice something that was working or not working. And I think that in business, leaders or influencers or CEOs, all of these people tend to be type A++ squared 10 times 10, and you're just blitzing down the road and you don't take time to notice what's working or not working. And then if you do, having the courage to take action on that. Do you find that same thing?
Yes, that's exactly right. We really looked at what were the challenges of that previous business, what prevented the type of scalability that we wanted, and how could we, do our best to, overcome that with a new business model. And that's where we just had to really lay everything on the table and decide, most importantly, what do we want to focus on and do more of? And then what are the things that we can leave behind? And we've kind of done that exercise, I would say, at least once a year with our business, because the business that we work in, media, online digital assets, all of this shifts so quickly. And we're in an age right now where it's shifting even more rapidly than what I had seen, the past decade of my career. And we constantly are having to say, what's not working anymore? What do we need to leave behind? And what do we need to zero in on moving forward? And sometimes I think the focus on where we need to kind of pinpoint moving forward is sometimes the really challenging part when there are so many shiny objects.
100%. And we can go down a rabbit hole on that one, shiny object syndrome, and people tend to pop, jump, and never give enough time for something to actually work when it probably would. But let's not go down there, because that's, a little bit of a telling trait that a lot of people have. They don't want to admit that they've got it, but I think we all do. Let's dive into your book, The Strategic Business Influencer. I love the title because influencers these days really do influence. And a lot of people think like, oh, well, I'm not on TikTok doing the big videos with the big following. But in business, you can be a business influencer to the niche or segment you work in. But I love the strategic business influencer connotation, because that means you are taking time to know strategically what it is your audience must understand about what you do, so that you can provide educational content to teach them to solve that. And then if you need me, let me know, and we can, work on that together. But talk a little bit about the genesis of the book.
That's exactly right, Mike. You nailed it. I've seen, influencers, of course, have completely transformed how we look at media, how we consume content. And I'd been seeing the past several years, business leaders who were doing this just incredibly strategically in their niche. And when I define a strategic business influencer, it's kind of counterintuitive, like you said, to what we think an influencer is. It's not about the number of followers. Strategic business influencers are leaders who are bringing strategic visibility to the activities, a lot of times that they're already doing behind the scenes, that are going to drive results in order to scale their impact. And I think that's what, a lot of leaders don't realize is it's not about becoming viral. It's not about being everywhere. It's getting in front of the right people. So I'd rather you have the right 500 followers than the right 5 million. And really looking at what activities do you do as a founder or a CEO or a leader that drive results for your business? And how can we just bring the right visibility to those things to scale your impact in a strategic way? And so that's really the premise of the book, is getting leaders to start thinking about it in that way, and thinking about, what does their brand look like alongside the business? I talk with so many CEOs or founders who go, you know what, online is just not for me. It doesn't make sense. My business is driven entirely by referrals. And a few things I will tell them is that's great that it's driven by referrals, but how many opportunities have we missed out on? Because once somebody goes and does their research on what their friend has referred them, they don't find anything that encourages them to move forward. So they don't move forward on contacting you. And a lot of times with referral driven businesses, you're referred by name. A lot of times they don't refer the business name. Or you look, commoditized. And so what I encourage leaders to think about is, it's no longer an option. If you are in a leadership position, or you're a CEO or a founder, you're online whether you like it or not. The question is are you controlling as much as you can to inform that first impression that people see? Because a lot of people mistake, that first impression, it's when I, meet them in person, or when I hop on a Zoom, or when I hop on a phone call. And really, it's when somebody Googles you before they go and meet you in person, or before they take your phone call.
We could talk for a week and a half on that one statement. I live by that mantra. And I think that too many people don't pay attention to that. And I will say this, one of the things that I kind of live by is, in your world, you might need SEO and for the brands and the websites and all that. But I work with individual financial advisors typically, in my work. And what I say is this, and it goes across any industry for the most part. Are people really Googling best attorney in whatever area, best financial advisor in, best CPA in? Probably not, because they know they're just going to get a bunch of ads. What they are doing They're Googling that person's name and company. So to your point, if someone gets referred, they're going to go, oh, I'm going to Google that person's name and company and see what I shall see. And do we see good, bad, ugly? And if all you see is the website and the social media and the directory listings for that person, that's boring. And I always say in presentations that I do, and this, I love treating these interviews as mastermind conversations because, when we can bring out, things that people can listen to later and go, ooh, they brought out some great points. So this is all about your work and what you do. I'm just resonating with what you're saying. But there's a old person, author, philosopher, whatever you want to think of him as, I've heard of. His name is Marshall McLuhan, and he wrote a book called The Medium is the Message. And one of the points in communicating messages is that he brought out is where your content is seen gives as much value as the actual content. So those leaders, those influencers you're mentioning, they might have the wonderful solution to whatever they do, and it's on their website, it's on in a white paper, it's on, and it gets buried, and people yawn and go, yeah, whatever. But as soon as that is in authoritative platforms like, oh, I did a TEDx talk on this thing. Oh, I was featured in this TV interview briefly about this thing. Now people sit up and take notice, and you're sitting there going, it's the same stuff I put on my website, but people ignore that.
That's right. That's right. And, you work in a heavily commoditized space. And so it is really hard to differentiate, one financial advisor from another, right?
Yeah.
Typically with how they present online. And so you have to think about, what makes you different, what is going to credential you. And you have to, before anybody gets to that incredible content, just like you're saying, you have to make that impression that creates that authority, using your terms. And so it's just so incredibly important that leaders get that first impression right. And then from there, they're really thinking, strategically about where they're spending their time so that it's highest and best use to driving results for their business.
And from an educational standpoint, I would suspect as well, you found, because when people start selling and, you need to buy this and fear and, there's an element of fear that you need to just bring to someone's attention. Like, hey, if you don't handle blah, blah, blah. But if you, focus too much on fear, people are like, I don't like that messaging. So it's gotta be, hey, you've got to be an educational advocate for your target audience as they struggle with whatever it is that you're working in. And when they can understand all the nuances of that, and then you're positioned as the person that has those solutions, it opens that door to make it easy to come to you.
That's right. And that's the beauty of leading with thought leadership alongside a corporate brand. So for example, if you're with Merrill Lynch, and I love Merrill Lynch, so I'm just going to use them as an example. There's so much credibility there, but when people see that corporate logo, they're going to be expected that they're being marketed to and they're being sold to, because that's what a company does. But when they see, an advisor next to that, a person, the idea is when you have your brand right alongside your company, you're able to start leading with thought leadership, which is somebody with something to teach, and educate and entertain versus, somebody with something to sell. And there's so much magic that can happen. I love Edelman's Trust Barometer. They just put out 2025. And, I've looked at it every year, and this stat has continued to increase. But what they found was, people perceive, authority with people that are like them. So peers. Yeah. So it's just incredible to see that, they see a peer as credible as they see traditional authority figures such as, doctors and physicians and lawyers, politicians, anybody holding public office. And that's pretty powerful in terms of a statement, and just seeing what, people, the power of people even up against, the traditional media outlets is quite incredible.
Yep. Talk a little bit about the relationship driven influence and how that relates to strategic business influence. Cause I feel like too many, executives, leaders in the C-suite, whatever, will go, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to do that, branding thing you talked about, in influence thing, but it's more of the 60,000 foot view, not even the 30,000 foot view.
Right. The relationship driven aspect is so incredibly important. When we think of, most CEOs, founders, or leaders, one of their top priorities is building relationships on behalf of their business, typically behind the scenes. They're either doing it with top tier talent that they're trying to attract, prospects that they're trying to bring into the company, investors, if that's a stakeholder audience, partners and vendors. That's absolutely, highest and best use of a senior leader's time. And so the concept that I like to think about is using content as an excuse to go out and build those relationships. So I encourage leaders to think about content and business development one and the same. So finding an excuse to include others in what you're creating. So this can be as simple as, starting an interview series. Maybe it's even just on your LinkedIn, but thinking about who are the top 25 relationships that you need to build on your business's behalf over the next year. And I guarantee you, leaders listening to this podcast can tell us very quickly who those 25 people are. And what I want to encourage them to do is find reasons to reach out and include them in content. So it could be, hey, I'm starting an interview series on, I don't know, it might be something a little bit more generic. Just to give you an example, we did this with a regional bank here in town, fastest growing community bank in Texas. And they started a full-blown podcast, which you don't have to do it to this level, but they had every, top entrepreneur in town come on this podcast and sit with the chairman and CEO for, 45 minutes and have an interview discussion. Yeah. And this podcast wasn't about banking, which no one was going to listen to. Yeah. This podcast is all about, creating the community and what, entrepreneurs have done to impact the community, how they see the future of the community, things that, this market would be very interested in and people they would be very interested in hearing from. But it was also as a way for this bank to grow and deepen relationships with key entrepreneurs that they want, part of their customer base and part of their investor base. And so that's what I would encourage you to do, is not just the, obvious in your industry podcast, but think about who are you trying to build relationships with and do an interview. What it does is it flips a sales to prospect interaction that you would typically have into more of a peer-to-peer interaction, which completely changes the game.
I have been preaching that for years as well, because I feel like a lot of people go, I need to do marketing, digital marketing. Let's do Facebook ads. And they just, buy clicks that go to a plain website, their homepage, and get no result. We can go down that rabbit trail all about, different things too. But the point is, I've said, hey, here's the deal. You need to do things where it's educating people. Check. Podcast. But too many times people go, oh, I'm going to do a podcast about, how to get the best investment from your bank or how to get, mortgage rates. No, but I like to look at it as this, with the concept of selling the futures, not the features, meaning when you're talking to your target audience, get them emotionally involved in down the road where they want to be, where they can attain to. And then you can go, oh man, wouldn't it be great if you had that? I can help you get there. Well, the same thing with what you just said in the podcast. If you were interviewing, using that bank as the example, if they were interviewing people, other business owners, CEOs, leaders in the community, not about why you should come to use our bank, but about what they did to grow their business, how they give back to the community. Maybe it's called, hometown leaders or change makers or whatever the case is. Now, all of a sudden, when your team is reaching out to that CEO to say, come set up your accounts here, and they get ghosted, now they're reaching out going, hey, we recognize your impact in the community. We've got a wonderful podcast where our CEO talks to CEOs, just kind of chatting about what you guys are doing, how you've done it, and how you make a difference in the world. Would you like to come on for a quick interview? Now, all of a sudden, it's like, yeah. Well, now that opens the door to who knows what, and it's way better than the blast email, the LinkedIn message, or the Facebook. So I just wanted to affirm and resonate with that. And people, they check off like, oh, podcasting doesn't work because I did 2 interviews before, but it's how you use it, how you apply it.
That's right. That's exactly right. And what this bank did so well too is they made it they made it an in-person experience. They
Oh,
came
wow.
into the bank and
Yeah.
there's a podcast studio in the middle of the bank, and they go around and
Even
meet
better.
all of the executives, and then they sit down with the head decision maker for 45 minutes. And as a business owner, that's incredible to have that
Yep.
time.
Gold.
Exactly. And so it just became this experience, which became this ripple effect for their business. And I always encourage even, people who start a podcast, I say, if you don't have an audience built in and you're just doing monologues on your area of expertise, it's going to be a lot slower. It's going to feel like you're shouting it into an empty room until you start involving other people strategically.
100%. But the thing is, people can hear that and go, "Oh, that's awesome," but I don't know where to start, or it takes effort, it takes expense, and then they default back to the things that they've tried. So it just gets down to, listen, you've got to get rid of that shiny object syndrome, which is bouncing from all over the place and trying to make something that'll work, but not giving it enough time. And even if you do it the right way, like what we're describing with launching your podcast, you can't look at the first 4 episodes and go, we didn't bring in a gazillion clients. It's got to be, just do it. Just do it. Have the faith that it's going to work and crank it out, make a difference. And I feel like if you, start that podcast or whatever effort, and I know you would resonate with this too. If you started going, what am I going to get out of that? The old WIIFM, what's in it for me? But if you go, how can I serve? What's in it? I want to have a serving call, not a sales call. How can I serve that business owner, that community, that CEO? That's going to come forth. And just like my good friend, and I've interviewed Bob Berg several times. If you've not read the book Go Giver, you need to go read the book, The Go Giver. But it's that concept. How could you give and serve and provide value? Because what goes around does come around.
That's absolutely right. And you conduct an interview the same way you would conduct a discovery call with a potential prospect. Your seat is to be curious and get to know as much as you can, really understand the problem, and then start looking at, how you can support that and how you can speak to that for them. And so I think that's absolutely the mindset to have. I would even say if you can't do a full-blown podcast, that's okay. Starting with a written interview series where you send over via email 5 to 7 questions for them to answer and send back to you, or you hop on a call and record it and transcribe it. Those are simple ways just to have, a lift that is just more strategically looking at that relationship building than what you're already doing.
Yep. I love it. Well, Paige, this has been so neat and fun and energizing. I love the work you do and how you do it. And if someone is listening to this thinking, hey, let me reach out and connect, what's the best way that they can learn more about your work and then reach out and connect with you?
Sure. If you go to Paige Velasquez Budde, BUDDE.com, or Zilker Media, ZILKER media.com. Those are some really great places to start. My book, The Strategic Business Influencer, is on both websites. You can look at that there. And then on my website, I wanted to share, I have a few free tools that have just been helpful from questions that I get asked time and time again. And like you said, Mike, I'm in the mindset, how can I just deliver value and support as much as possible business leaders who are asking a lot of these questions. And so I have a free quiz just to, we talked about that first impression for leaders and CEOs, and it's just a quick brand audit, kind of where's your brand right now, and maybe where are some areas you need to focus. And then I have what's called an influence ID workbook. And this is where, leaders are wanting to take that step and really look at how do they define their brand as an executive alongside the business. And so it's a free 18-page workbook that you can download there. Nothing is required to do that other than your emails so that we can send you that workbook. But I really hope that this is just a good resource for leaders who are thinking about this.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for that, as well as for coming on. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you today.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.